Hello, everyone. We are back with yet again another roundtable discussion by the Gender and Society Cluster. Today, I have on panel Sashank and Ananya, and I will be moderating this roundtable. So today we will be discussing same-sex marriage and how it has sort of become the final goal of the queer liberation movement. So whether it is a triumph or distraction for the queer community. As most of you probably already know, the court of South Korea recently recognized a gay couple and recognize their rights in an insurance battle. And same-sex marriage has always been a part of news related to the queer community. Um, Thailand is going to become the second nation soon, hopefully, who is going to legalize same-sex marriage in Asia. And as we already know, the address by Putin also included the discussions surrounding same-sex marriage. But many feminists and queer theorists are against this sort of putting same-sex marriage on the pedestal and making it the final goal of the queer movement. So it's very interesting how there are two sides of this movement who looks on the face of it uh, the sort of like it has become the image of uh, uh, reaching queer rights and queer equality in the society. So we will be discussing this priority given to same-sex marriage as part of fight for queer rights. To sort of start off the discussion, let's discuss why same-sex marriage might be important for the queer community and what the recognition by the state does for the community. Would either of you like to? Okay, Ananya?
I think not in terms of the mainstream emotional attributes like that marriage is this, marriage can make you happy and all of that. Other than that, I think when talking about state and uh, how couples how couples where their marriage is recognized, the kind of benefits they are given compared to the couples who do not marry, even for that matter of fact, in living relationship, the kind of social security they have. Also, in term, a lot of ration schemes cater to families. So I think marriage is the basic unit of creating a family, and family as a unit is protected by the state and recognized by the state, and that kind of legal recognition does help a lot. So I think in terms of economy and in terms of social, economic, and financial security, marriage, it's sad, but it's a reality that marriage does help a lot in providing that security and that layer wherein your recognized and your legal recognition matters. And also in terms of alimonies, divorce, in terms of protection from domestic violence, there's Domestic Violence Act, which protects married women, and they do not protect intimacies like in same-sex relationships. So all of that does come after marriage. So obviously, it's an established and an important institution when it comes to survival.
Shashank, do you have something to add?
Just a very small point because Ananya kind of summarized it very well. Um, I think if we were to see the queer communities, they've always been there for ages and since time immemorial, but they have never been really recognized per se by the state. They've always been ostracized from the society or looked down upon and things like that. So I think for them, the same-sex marriage, and as Ananya pointed out, marriage it's kind of one of the most defining factors in relationships. And hence, when the state recognizes that, they see it as probably the highest or the biggest victory of recognition that they could get from the state, which is a form of a legal recognition from the state itself that acknowledges of their existence in a lot of sense. So I think that's why there has been a lot of positivity whenever any queer communities and same-sex marriages laws have been passed.
Yes, absolutely. As you both covered, um, you get through human rights as part of marriage. Marriage rights are basically human rights in some ways because you get such basic rights through this recognition by the state as part of the judiciary, and every sort of legal case you can adopt children. There are several layers to the possibility, the access to marriage, basically. So clearly, there are many pros to same-sex marriage, as you both discussed. So why do you guys think feminists and queer theorists are against this sort of the route queer liberation movement is sort of taking? Um, yes, Ananya, and then Shashank.
Yeah, I don't think so. There are pros to marriage. I think it's been institutionalized like that to see that marriage is important for survival because when it comes to reality, it is an inherently patriarchal institution, and also fighting for marriage, fighting for something that's patriarchal in its core and already has oppressed women, and when say the marginalized genders of the LGBTQIA plus communities, when they fight for marriage, it can, create a very sort of, uh, it can create a dichotomy as to if they're fighting for the, uh, because if they fight for marriages, they're actually supporting an institution that has been patriarchal. So that's what feminists have argued again, because marriage as an institution, and it can also steer away from what the conversation should be like, where you should legalize live-in relationships, where you should recognize couples who want to live together without marrying, where you should give rights that emanate from marriage, rights that protect you from violence, rights to adopt people. You should give these rights. These rights should not be dependent on marriage. These should be exclusive rights given to all kinds of couples. So while this should be the mainstream discourse, the discourse has now lowered down to marriage, which is again very problematic because here, just by giving them these rights, you're again forwarding a patriarchal institution. So the discourse rather should be about giving these couples exclusive rights of adoption, rights of uh, being together, and all the social security, job security. But yeah, that conversation will steer away if we focus so much on marriage.
Yes, Shashank.
Kind of beautifully put it. But just adding just a couple of more points to her, wherein Nanya rightly said that, through recognition of marriage, and now when marriage has now taken the central forum of queer recognition, you are in a lot of sense now creating this dichotomy wherein you are allowing for this state to monitor, and essentially when you're kind of legalized, or when you kind of when the state legalizes marriage, it's nothing but a tool for it to to regulate your family and to regulate gender and race like that. And now, so with the formal recognition of the queer marriages, what's happening is that now you're again creating somewhat compartmentalizing, these are like properly identified and legally what if I'm the state, I'm like, okay, I have identified them, and these are the legally self-identified gay or lesbian couples, and hence I will provide them with so and so rewards. And the other relationships that Ananya talked about, those are really like just brushed under the carpet. And as a result of which, it kind of diverts the entire narrative of of achieving this social justice and through economic equality and things like that. And that's why why when you are asking the state to recognize marriage, you are empowering the state to really not encroach upon, but at least have a say in very in matters which are very, very personal to you. Just to provide an example, if you were in a very close relationship, you wouldn't be telling that to everybody else. You would probably be just telling it to your very close friends or your families and things like that. Essentially, what it now has happened is that you are now forced to tell the state, like, look, I have now, this is my spouse, I've married so, and hence give me the benefits that I'm entitled to. And the other guy who doesn't say all of this to the state doesn't get those benefits. And that's where the real problem lies.
Did you have something to add, Ananya?
Yeah, just one point. Also, just to extend Shashank's point, just legal recognition is not enough if you do not have social recognition. So even if they recognize your marriage, the state recognizes your marriage, you still can be afraid to tell people that you're marrying your same gender, or you're not marrying within the binary. And you could get a lot of hate from the society. So I think, again, it is an intrusion of privacy. And also, I remember that there was a case called Arun Kumar and Shrija that we studied in law school. So it's a case where this is the first time where intersex couples were allowed to marry. The women was the one person was intersex, and then there was a cishet male. They were allowed to marry, but again, they were only allowed to marry because they fit in the binary, because the intersex person identified as a woman. So while the court said that this intersex person identifies as a woman, so she is a woman, she has the legal right to identify as a woman, so she can marry the man. But again, she fit into the binary, and that's when the state allowed. So what happens to couple who do not fit into this binary? What happened to the same genders, or people who do not fit into the binary?
Yeah, this particular point sort of moves our discussion to the next question that I'll introduce in a bit. But you guys rightly covered how same-sex marriage, right, that do not assure basic rights to queer people or queer couples in general. Uh, Simply saying that the state is recognizing someone's union does not assure they'll get to adopt a child. They'll be protected by the society as well. That if they go to an adoption center, they won't face discrimination and would be given a child. So and also the institution of marriage itself is very heteronormative, right? And it sort of perpetuates the capitalist agenda of perpetuating and sort of like forwarding your property ownership. Basically, that's what the institution of marriage is for, and the institution of family itself. It's for the cishet monogamous couple. Um, but to take up Ananya's last point again, it's the idea of marriage being idealized is sort of it caters to the needs and requirements of the binary, the accepted. And therefore, there's a certain image of the respectable queer couple, this respectable queer itself, which can be accepted by the society, and sort of limits the idea of queer itself in our minds. So, what do you think is the role of respectability politics in this whole discourse of same-sex marriage? Yes, Sachan.
Yeah. I'm glad that Ananya actually brought up the Arun Kumar and Shrija case, because I think that's a very good example of respectability politics in play. Because what is respectability politics? Essentially, wherein a marginalized community are forced to somewhat suppress or hide their interests just to gel in with the population, with the general population. And in this case, it manifests as a form wherein you assimilate into the heteronormative society, wherein it's kind of like a self-imposing. And that's what happened to this case as well. It's like it's not too much, so not too trans, so it's fine. It still fits into the binaries, and hence you can marry it. So that's what really happens over here as well, and that's where this narrative of respectability politics really comes into play, wherein it tells that you have to be respectable to be respected. And I think that's like the most powerful tool that they can do. And in a lot of sense, it's kind of really stupid, because you are telling the suppressed community that, look, you are suppressed not because I'm suppressing you, but you ought to be suppressed. You're acting like that. What can I do? So it's kind of like that. And that's where this narrative kind of builds around on that foundation, and it plays around, it kind of creates this victimhood kind of an ideology, wherein they feel, oh, am I God? Like, am I too gay? Am I too lesbian? Am I not able to fit in with the population, and things like that? And once this, as respectability politics gains more and more traction, then when you start losing the direction towards equality there, and everybody tries to fit into whatever the social stereotype is, which is not real, no, which is not really true for themselves.
Ananya?
Yeah, as Shashank put in, I think respectability politics is here to oppress the communities further. I think they are just a tool, they're trying, they've been forced to fit into the binary. So couples who cannot express who they are, and the community members or the genders who do not identify within the binary, if they're close to the binary, if they dress up like the binary, it's okay for them to exist and for the identity to be hidden. And again, for the people who are out there who embrace themselves, again, they have not been recognized, and that's what the problem with same-sex marriage will be. The kind of recognition, particular kinds of marriage within the community will get. The marriages which are near to the binary, or they do represent the heteronormativity, they will be recognized, as was in Arun Kumar and Shrija. But the marriages which do not confer to the binary, or maybe marriages within the same genders, they wouldn't be recognized, nor by the state, and I think, and of course, nor by the society. So I think that sort of inequality or the disparity will be really problematic.
Yes, as you both correctly sort of discussed, queerness is not just about, having colored hair and putting pronouns in your bio. It's more than that. It's the state sort of in this way, or I would say the sort of acceptable queers who are a big part of the discourse surrounding queer movement itself. Um, are a certain kind of a certain background, certain intellect, of a certain class. So it sort of like shows who is allowed to be queer, right? It's only for certain people to have access to queerness itself, sort of materializing, objectifying queerness. Um, to follow up and sort of close this discussion and bring the discourse to the Indian context itself. What can be said about the same-sex marriage discourse in the case of India, where the marriage situation is completely different, and and the movement is sort of in its early stages. Early stages, we can say, it has been going on for a long time. The queer community has been working on it, has been working towards liberation for decades. But it's still in its very sort of vulnerable stage, especially with the political state of our country. So, what do you guys think? Yes, Shashank.
Well, there have been some progress that has been made, especially by the Supreme Court in 2018. They had decriminalized homosexual relationships, and then recently also, I think he gave some protections for atypical families and things like that. I'm not too sure of the details, but I think with Chandrachud becoming the Chief Justice, there has been some positivity that he'll bring in these kind of changes. But I think the government here, the ruling party here, is especially very, very against it. I think even recently now, when it came to the appointment of judges, the government opposed Saurabh Kripal's nomination because of his sexual orientation. He's like, he will support the community, or what will be no equality and things like that. So, as we can see, it is not really gonna be an easy process over here, especially since it's only the Supreme Court that's doing the stuff. The local courts haven't been really as advocative as they should be, and so the progress, unfortunately, might come in very slowly, and it also can only come in when the government, I think, cooperates really, because to create laws and all, you need the government really. The Supreme Court can only enforce it. So like the anti-discriminatory laws, we really don't have that against the queer community, say for, I don't know, for housing and adoption and things like that. They are still discriminated, and that creates a lot of problems. And even if we were to bring in, because of the diversity that our country has, the every we don't even have a uniform civil rights. Everything is now, because we for the Hindus it's the Hindu Marriage Act, then the Muslims they have it, the Christian marriages have it, the Parsis have it. So now you need to combine all of this and then bring in one central act that protects the community among all the hullabaloo that the government creates and things like that. That's going to be quite a task, but there has been some optimism around. I'm not going to dismiss that.
Ananya, please go on.
I think while there has been there has been little optimism around, if we see from the 2018 update Singh Johar judgment to now, which Shashank was talking about, the judgment about atypical families and how Chandrachud recognized that all families are families that don't necessarily have to fit in the binary. But again, Shashank brought in a very important point that these are Supreme Court landmark judgments. We don't know what's happening at the lower levels. We don't know what's happening at the registrar office where people are going to register their marriages. We don't even know, like, thousands of people, marriages would have been dismissed because of their identities, and they do not have the resources to appeal and go to the Supreme Court. It was just one case that we read about, Arun Kumar and Shrija, that I'm repeating, but yeah. But that case in itself, it's a result of a lot of resources and that kind of willpower you have to appeal and go to the apex court as a whole. There are thousands of people who might have been dismissed on a daily basis and they cannot do anything. We do not know what's happening in the trial court, the kind of hate crimes against the LGBTQIA+ community. All of this is so prevalent, but these courts, the justice system, which is most at par at the most lower level, because there are very few cases that go up to the Supreme Court. And these are the progressive judgments we talk about, but we do not know, we do not talk about the reality of what's happening in, a small court in Delhi, or, the high courts in small cities. Because, that's where the reality is, and that's where their rights are dismissed. And these people right now have no rights, to be honest. And in terms of marriage, it's a long way to go. While there is a petition that's in Delhi High Court, and it's the case is still going on, and if you read the arguments of the state in this case, it's completely, it's extremely funny, but at the same time sad, because state is coming up with these kinds of arguments. They're talking about how the sanctity of marriage will be destroyed, and how marriage is a heteronormative institution, and they've found euphemisms to put in to make it more beautiful, to talk about marriage. Marriage is about a man and a woman, and how it's beautiful and all of that. But yeah, it's extremely funny. So in terms of the legal system as a whole, in terms of legal system recognizing same-sex marriage, India has a long way to go. So while there are a lot of arguments, but again, I do not think so recognizing marriage should be the fight here. But I cannot advocate. But yeah, I don't think so recognizing marriage should be the fight here. Rather, recognizing the rights that emanate from marriage right now, that is the social security, the job security, adoption rights, that should be recognized and that should be talked about, because marriage is steering away, because marriage already has oppressed a lot. Like every woman in every marriage has been oppressed here. It's a institution for men, and it's the institution for these, for the privileged genders. So I think rather than talking about marriage, to talk about the rights that emanate from marriage, and that should not actually, that should be talked about.
Absolutely. As I don't remember who said this, but they are from the queer community itself. Um, like it's not even about the queers. No one has marriage has never liberated anyone. It's an institution that ties you down to the state, to the nation itself, and ties you down to so many things that society expects you to do basically. And it's a rite of passage that just that's just expected of you basically. So yeah, so to sort of conclude the discussion, as we discussed, queer rights should not be limited to just fighting for same-sex marriage. But it's much more than that. It's much more complex, and we should be looking at more basic level rights, human rights for the queer community itself, and putting same-sex marriage on the pedestal, on the forefront of the queer liberation movement shouldn't be the way to go, basically. So that was a great discussion, guys. And thanks for being a part of this panel. I will see you guys in the next edition of the roundtable. Thank you.